This video is on theatricality, and it's part of this week's lecture for Theater 191, and I'm your professor, Dr. Christiana Muldrum-Harkelich. What does theatricality mean, both as a concept and as a word? That's what we're going to be talking about in this week's video. So, the dictionary definition tells us that theatricality means of or pertaining to an actor or the theater. Now, this is a really general idea. Does everything that happens on stage, is that inherently theatrical? Are people who are exaggerated or over the top inherently theatrical? The word gets used in both of those ideas. But theatricality itself describes the aspects of a piece of art that are inherently performative, that can be nothing other than the live event, and are possible because of that style of performance. So, when we're talking about things that are theatrical and theatricality, we're thinking about the art form of performance and how that uniquely can describe the way a story gets told. In other words, we might think of this as what can we do in theater that can't be done in any other way? And there's something really special about having stories told on the stage. As we talked about early in the class, all we really need is an actor and an empty space to perform a story. And an audience is willing to go along with that performer and understand that when they pick up a pretend glass, that it is the fanciest kind of wine, if that's what they say. This is a concept that comes from Thomas Coleridge called suspension of disbelief, the idea that we suspend our non-believing in order to better understand what is happening in the story. And it's a really remarkable use of our imaginations. There's something about theatricality that is also inherently about our imaginations, because theater asks us to imagine another world and a story happening in real time on stage. And that's a pretty miraculous thing that we as humans can use our imaginations to understand those stories, and we just go with it. We don't even really think about it. And that's really what Coleridge is getting at with the idea of suspension of disbelief. Robert Emben Jones, who was a scenic designer and very influential at the beginning of the 20th century, he wrote in his book, The Dramatic Imagination, that many people confuse imagination with ingenuity, with inventiveness, but imagination is not this thing at all. It is the peculiar power of seeing with the eye of the mind, and it is the very essence of theater. And that's what theatricality lets us do. It lets us imagine that if you saw the opera last week, there was a scene in which the two actresses went into a bar. But the way that we knew it was a bar was that there was a cart with bottles of alcohol on it. And that's all we actually really needed to know that it was a bar. And that kind of minimalism that lets us imagine a whole nother world is one of the basic elements of theatricality. Theatricality is tied to the Greek idea of mimesis, which Aristotle wrote about in his work on drama. That is over 2,000 years old, and so this is a really old idea. And Plato and Aristotle wrote about it as an aesthetic or artistic theory to refer to the attempt to imitate or reproduce reality. Mimesis is derived from the Greek verb which means to imitate. And it's in conversation with the idea of diegesis, which means to tell. Mimesis is to perform. And it's this idea that even though we know it is not real, it is trying to be as if it is real. I think the easiest way to think about mimesis is to think about how puppets work, right? We have a whole history of watching puppets, and I have here a picture of Kermit the Frog, who's one of the best known puppets, I think, in the world. And he is a member of the Muppets, and he is felt with eyes that don't move. And yet, we believe him because of the way that he is manipulated by puppeteers and voiced by an offstage actor to be a living frog. We both know that he is not real and accept that he is talking and moving and able to tell us a story in the same moment. And that's sort of what getting at both theatricality is, right? Because it is no way real, and yet is able to let us imagine an entirely different world in which frogs talk, and also mimesis, in which we are looking at the world as if it is real. After this video, I'm going to post a video of a short clip of some different puppets that let you think about both theatricality and the way that we just accept that those are living things on stage.